whiz. So I am a proud Southside, Chicago-born resident. I am also a 25-year IBW Local 134 member. I started out as an apprentice back in 1999, where I graduated as a journeyman. And I actually had the fortunate opportunity to lead multiple men and women on various projects for various contractors, in amazing projects, like the Red Line renovation a few years ago, before being tapped on the shoulder to serve as a business representative for IBW Local 134. And I was actually one of the business representatives to represent nearly 12,000 men and women who build the infrastructure, and now I represent Powering Chicago. I was actually tapped on the shoulder a few years after being in the business representative role. And this role is really huge for me because it actually represents the industry. And not only am I representing the men and women who are out there and performing the work, but I'm also representing the contractors who hire the men and women who do these amazing works throughout the city. Let's get this clicker going. Let's see. All right, that's me. You're done with that one. All right, so now about Powering Chicago. So Powering Chicago is the unique labor and management partnership between the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 134, and the Electrical Contractors Association of Chicago and Cook County, where we represent, like I said, 12,000 men and women and over 600 contractors. And we stand on three main pillars: that is better construction, better careers, and better community. And our members are elevating the industry performance through their commitment to safety, a level of experience and reliability, while also investing in the future of skilled labor through an innovative 5-year apprenticeship program. Now, to get started with today's topic, we must first take an inventory of where we are in the region, and I'm sure you heard about that today, so I'll try to keep that brief, all right? And we'll also delve into the highlight of EV adoption, its goals, and for an example, the projected need for workforce to meet those lofty goals, and try to provide a blueprint on how we can meet that expected workforce need. I will also touch on the importance of collaboration within the region, specific to IBW and NECA electrical contractors for the long-term maintenance services, and highlight the key factors to consider when selecting an electrical contractor for your electrical infrastructure needs. Okay, this is a shameless promotion. This is some of the resources that we have to kind of guide individuals on that journey. What we do is we provide information from connecting consumers to available resources offered through some partners like ComEd, to providing information on available rebates, to providing a list of qualified licensed electrical contractors. We provide the necessary resources to educate those who are ready to invest in that infrastructure evolution. Now, where we are now. Our first step in understanding our infrastructure goals is to understand what's driving them. For instance, we have the mandate for 1 million EVs on the road by 2030. Everyone's familiar with that. We have the state plans to run on 100% clean energy by the year 2050. We have the Reimagining Energy in Vehicles, the Illinois Act, which is a highly competitive incentive program to bolster Illinois' manufacturing clean goals. We also have the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. We also have the Manufacturing Illinois Chips for Real. There's so many. We also have in October in 2021, the plans that were announced to set up a charging station across the Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Here, just regionally and specific to Illinois, we had a mandate for all on-site parking and commercial properties with 30 or more parking spaces to have 20% of any of those supplied parking spaces to be dedicated to electric vehicle supply equipment. Now, what does that all mean, right? What that means is that these policies and programs provide a framework to prepare our infrastructure for the future. The question then arises, well, who's going to build this infrastructure? Well, let me highlight a recent study performed by the Council on Clean Transportation identifying the workforce demands. Now, I'll be brief because this was done on the internet, and of course, there's a lot of information, and I wanted to make sure that I can reach my allotted time. But there's an expected growth of charging infrastructure that could create more than 160,000 jobs by 2032. That's not far away, right? And when we look at these job categories, they can range. Most often, people think that it will require boots on the ground to building and construction, but we're going to need electrical engineers. We're also going to need, in that construction space, you're going to need project managers, right, and the like, safety coordinators. And that's why it's important to look at this holistically and not just in the realm of workforce needs for boots on the ground. In January of 2024, the International Council on Clean Transportation released this study projecting that significant job growth and job opportunities to be created just through the EV network. This does not even include the solar boom as well. The report explores that the labor demands will rise due to the rapid growth of EV market and the need for an extensive charging network. That electric vehicle charging infrastructure build-out needs to accelerate in unison with that EV uptake. For instance, by 2032, approximately 4.1 million non-home chargers and 37.4 million residential chargers will be needed to support the light-duty vehicle fleet. Now, that's light duty, okay? By 2032, approximately 29,000 ultra-fast and fast chargers and 500,000 overnight chargers will be needed for the medium heavy-duty fleets. We also have the additional job creation for increased domestic production. This is where manufacturing can play a role. It is estimated that about 33% of level 2 chargers and 100% of the DC fast chargers will undergo final assembly here in the US, creating more than 13,000 jobs in charger assemblies by 2032. And this number does not account for the charger component production assembly, which carries a potential for even greater job growth. Of course, with the right policies, we can maximize the economic and social benefits. So we've heard from all these other benefits that can happen for job creation, but there's another benefit that really resonates with me, and that's the social and environmental impact. I don't know if anyone remembers, but recently, about a couple of years ago, the CTA introduced an all-electric fleet. I think it's Bus Route 66. And the reason why that resonates with me, it travels along Chicago Avenue. Now, anybody that's familiar with Chicago area region and has had the opportunity to travel down Chicago Avenue will know that that's one of the most disinvested communities in Chicago. And the reason why that's important is because I remember as a child being along Chicago Avenue, visiting my grandparents and seeing those, and those who are from Chicago can recognize those green CTA buses back in the day, right? And the large plume of smoke that used to come out, right? And not thinking about what kind of effect that would have on the young kids, the men and women that live in those communities. And so it's important that when we think about the advent of these technologies, and of course the money that it can generate, the opportunities they can generate for our pockets, and for our communities, but also what impact that will have on the community on a social aspect. And so for me, it resonates because I remember as a child experiencing that, and it resonated with me to see that bus route being on one of the most iconic routes, but also making sure that it was in one of the most disinvested communities. Right? So let's talk about some of the effects that can have an impact on our policies. Of course, you see my rendition of what could affect it. We have policy instability. Of course, we're in the climate, and I think it's today, right? We will have a debate, right, with two totally different views on what the future would look like for this country, right? So when we think about what can happen, we have the Inflation Reduction Act that's in place, and we also heard that there is conversations about maybe even removing a lot of those incentives that would help foster this change that we're in the room here talking about today. We also have cash flow uncertainty. This is important to me because, again, I represent over 600 contractors. Some of those contractors used to be in the ditches with me when I was working out in the field. And one of the challenges that they have is that the fact that when they do work on these projects or they do work on these jobs, that they're not getting paid in a feasible amount of time that would ensure that they're able to support the men and women who are working on these projects and ensure that they can continue to grow, right? So we have to address these issues, and policy has to be instated that will help support these. We also have EV workforce programs. All right. Now I got to get down and dirty. So I heard a few individuals in the back talking about a couple of programs, and those programs, fortunately, are on the good end. But because there is a fluctuation of money and an inflow of money, there's a lot of programs that are being implemented that try to meet the goals of creating a workforce. And my concern, of course, being a 25-year member and a resident of Chicago and from the South Side, and being an African-American, a black man in this industry, that oftentimes we don't think about the impact that these programs can have on an individual if it does not connect them to real job opportunities. I'm going to say that again. Real job opportunities. So far and so much and for so long, we've been based on numbers. We've been checking a box to have people go through these programs and promising the opportunity, but those opportunities never come about. And it's important that we connect with individual programs that are established, that have a correct and really a valid reputation, but not only that, that have a reputation to connect to those organizations that are part of these Inflation Reduction Act programs, meaning IBEW Local 134 in Chicago, but IBEW programs. I am happy to say that some of those programs and some of those institutions are connected to us. We have HACIA, we have Hire 360, who is here, and we have a couple of other programs that have all been part of the collaborative effort to make sure that individuals that go through those programs have an opportunity to take advantage of the real work that was available to them. What's also beneficial, and again, I know we're talking about infrastructure, but we have programs, for instance, like the Renewable Energy Fund. That particular program introduces young men and women who are affected either through the justice community, through the college programs, or through the social services network, to opportunities through solar. And what it does is it creates an opportunity for them to not only get educated on the basics of electricity, but it does it through the realm of solar integration. That program is a pre-apprenticeship program that when they're done, they actually have an opportunity to work side by side union electricians as trainees. This further gives them the opportunity not to just say, I want to be an electrician and take advantage of these opportunities that are being afforded, but it also gives them an opportunity to say, no, this is not for me, right? And again, that's so important to wrap this all around, is because in order for this infrastructure to take hold, in order for this to really be the vision to come to fruition, it has to be reliable and it has to be safe. Those two things are the most important things that we can ever think about. It's important to understand that there are, matter of fact, if I can digress just a little bit to talk off point, I'm sorry, I'll make sure I keep my time. This is the problem with giving me the microphone. How many people remember in Chicago we had the Arctic freeze, right? Charging stations weren't working and people were blaming the charging stations, saying they're not working, right? I just want to provide a point of privilege in saying that that may not have always been the case. What we need to do is we need to educate the customers and consumers on how this technology interfaces and interacts with one another. For instance, how many knew that the battery has to be conditioned to accept the charge before it starts charging? All right, far less hands went up, right? And so when we're talking about a battery that has been in the cold, and the only reason why I know this is because I'm an electrician, right? So this is the training that we get to make sure that the equipment that we install is reliable. But because that battery has to be conditioned, it has to be able to accept the influx of amperage and power that's going to be put in the battery in order to accept that charge. That means that it has to be warm enough. And so when we have vehicles that have been out in the cold and you take a cold charge and you plug it up, now you have to wait. And so these are some of the examples of what can happen. So I apologize. I took my point of privilege. Also, we have diversity goals. We also know that CEJA, FEJA, and all these other programs have an intention. And that intention is to make sure that those who don't and have not historically been a part of the progress get an opportunity. That includes individuals that look like me, and that includes women. And I'm excited to say that we've partnered with these groups in order to make sure that those goals that were set by policy come to fruition. All right. So I touched on this a little bit because I got out of text, but collaboration is key. And collaboration with experienced, qualified electrical contractors and expertly trained workforce for the installation and long-term maintenance is also key. An important factor in addressing these electrical infrastructure and implementing the newer technologies within those systems is understanding the electrical codes, in particular NFPA 70B. This standard highlights the required maintenance for existing and newer electric technologies within the electrical systems, ensuring efficient and effective operations. Many remember, okay, I touched on that, so no need to touch on that. All right. Okay. These programs connect to our training facility, which is located in Alsip. That training facility is the IBW NECA Technical Institute in Alsip, and it has been the training members in specialized work for decades. At Intech, the IBW Local 134 electricians train through a 5-year accredited apprenticeship program and graduate with journey persons. Apprentices complete over 8,000 hours of classroom and on-the-job training for this program. And Intech's U.S. Department of Labor recognized apprenticeship program has trained union electricians on electrical vehicle infrastructure from the beginning. Because of our commitment to educating members on new and emerging technologies, we have developed an extensive knowledge on the experience and successful building out the EV and renewable energy infrastructure. Projects include charging infrastructure at numerous grocers, theaters, dealerships throughout the Chicago metropolitan area. You might ask, well, what identifies Local 134 and NECA members as qualified to work? Well, due to our apprenticeship training program, all Powering Chicago members are qualified under the Illinois Commerce Commission's certification requirements to perform the installation, maintenance, or repair work on electrical systems. It is also critical that infrastructure projects, whether it's electric vehicle supply equipment, solar, wind, or whatever that equipment may be, that it be properly installed to the highest standards and safety possible. There are programs that can help. For example, and I heard someone talk about this, the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Training Program, or EVITP. EVITP is one that was designated and designed to provide qualified electricians with the most comprehensive training available. EVIT is a collaboration, again, there's that word, of industry stakeholders, including automakers, educational institutions, utility companies, and more. So I'm running out of time, so let's talk a little bit more about the workplace compliance. Earlier, I touched on the investment made by IBW and NECA. Industry relationships are going to be key. In Chicago, organizations like Hire 360, Chicago Women in Trades, Chicago Builds, and others outreach programs and pre-apprenticeship program collaborations continue to identify qualified candidates. Okay. So often the question arises, well, what specific skill sets what one must have in order to ensure construction on a safe and reliable electrical infrastructure? To that question, again, I point to the IBW. The IBW has built the infrastructure that we rely on today, and that infrastructure is more than a centuries old here in Chicago, and it has served our needs to this point rather brilliantly. As we look to usher into the next iteration of energy infrastructure, the expertise and knowledge that exists in systems is paramount. Training the next generation of electricians on the importance of the safe installation of renewable energy, including safe and high-quality installations and supporting electrical infrastructure, is critically important. So in my conclusion, the success of our infrastructure build-out goals hinges on having a highly skilled and safety-conscious workforce. By prioritizing collaboration with reputable and competent programs, highly skilled, expertly trained electricians, and qualified licensed electrical contractors like those at Powering Chicago, there is a true opportunity to create the more inclusive workforce to ensure seamless deployment and maintenance of the infrastructure that we envision and deserve. Thank you.